Hello and welcome to Reduce Your Anxiety in 5 minutes. So, when you are working with people, sometimes you can see a change in your client's body language, and you know that something big is coming up for them. But depending on what you're trained in, you might not have the ability to help that anxiety to come down. So I'm going to show you something called EFT. And with EFT, with a couple of rounds of EFT, you can take someone from overwhelm and anxiety, bring them back into balance. And this is not just for your clients. This can be for you too, for your family, for your friends. EFT reduces cortisol and adrenaline in a person's system by 42% after 9 minutes. I'm just checking. My brain's going, is that factually correct? That's factually correct. You can look at Peter Stapleton's work, and she has done loads of research on EFT. There's about 370 writings that have been put in medical journals about this. So yeah, 9 minutes of EFT tapping can reduce cortisol and adrenaline in a person's system by 42%. And that is massive. It's massive for us, because we all get in those situations in life, don't we, where we're like, cannot cope. Or an out of the blue situation can happen where you go into panic and you don't know what to do. And in those situations, you can use that exactly where you are. You don't need to know anything. You don't even need to say anything. It will still work. It's the tapping on your meridian points that works. And you can use this on your clients if you feel them going into a big emotional reaction. You can use some EFT on them for 3 or 4 rounds and then just recalibrate your client and then check in with them and see where they are. So we're going to start off. I don't know if you know EFT, if you've done this before. This part of your hand is where we do what's called a setup phrase. So a setup phrase means we're tuning in to the issue and we're naming it in as much detail as we possibly can. So we do a setup phrase and we repeat that phrase 3 times whilst we're tapping here on this karate chop point. From there, we do small words, reminder phrases. So we move on to these points around the face, under the eye, under the nose, under the chin, on the collarbone. If you just feel for where your collarbone is, it's like a little nodule. Um, there, just come a tiny little bit lower than that nodule and tap there. Or you can use your full fist. And then under your arm, if you feel under your arm, you will feel like a spot that is just a bit more tender than the other points. You can tap there. And top of the head as well, just around the center of the head there. So when we are in stress, in overwhelm, in anxiety, we hold that tension in our breath. Our breathing starts to become more shallow. We might be breathing faster. We can usually get a tension across our chest. If you take yourself back to a time when you felt anxious, you probably had all of those things yourself. You can feel like there's a knot in your tummy as well sometimes. So I'm going to do a generalized setup phrase with you because I don't know everyone's personal situation. I don't know what your client's personal situation will be when you're working with them and you need this. We can do a generalized setup phrase, and it's called the restriction in my breathing. So if you start by tapping on the side of your hand here, this is where we'll do the setup phrase and we'll say something like, even though I have this restriction in my breathing, and then we'll do an acceptance of that because in the acceptance, we neutralize the emotional charge. When we're resisting something and we're fighting with it, we keep that problem going, we keep that energy going, and we can actually increase the physical symptoms and make it worse for us. So we always do an acceptance. So I accept that I am feeling this and I accept me. So before we go into the full thing, I just want you to just have a quick rating of your own breathing. Okay, so if you take a breath in, how easy is it to breathe all of that air into your lungs on a scale of 1 to 10? So 10 being, my breathing is really shallow. I really struggle to take a deep breath. And 0 is that was perfectly fine. It was really easy. I didn't struggle whatsoever. 5 is somewhere in the middle. Like I could breathe in. There wasn't a problem breathing in, but I had to make the effort to take all that air into my lungs. So 10 is you're finding it difficult to breathe. Like that would be when someone was in high anxiety. If someone was really panicking, it would be a 10. If someone's a 0, then they're really relaxed. So just rate where you are right now before you do this. So take that deep breath in. How easy was that? Or how difficult was that? And then we'll start. We're going to check that rating again at the end so that we can see that it's eased. So if you just repeat after me, even though I have this restriction in my breathing, I accept that I have this for whatever reason, and I'm going to accept me anyway. So we'll do that a second time. So even though I have this restriction when I try to breathe deeply, I accept that I'm feeling this because I am, and I'm going to accept where I am anyway. So even though I have this restriction in how deeply I can breathe, I accept that I'm feeling this for whatever reason, and I'm going to accept where I am and accept me anyway. At the beginning of your eye, this restriction in my breathing. Then we'll move to the side of your eye, this restriction in my breathing. Underneath your eye, this restriction in my breathing. Underneath your nose, this restriction in my breathing. Underneath your lip, this restriction in my breathing. On your collarbone here, this restriction in my breathing. Underneath your arm on that sore spot, this restriction in my breathing. And on the top of your head, this restriction in my breathing. Okay, so then we've done one full round of EFT. It wasn't quite 9 minutes, so you can see why I'm saying you might need to do a few rounds. So take a breath in now and just assess, where are you now? Has it become a little bit easier to take a full breath in? It has for me. It wasn't difficult before, but I can feel my lungs just feel more expansive. So just tune into you. And then we're going to do another round of EFT. Just assess yourself. What number were you before? And where do you feel you are now? So if your breathing has become better, you'll come down from that scale of 10 down closer to a 0. If there's no change, then just carry on with this. So tapping on the side of your hand again. So even though I still have some restriction in my breathing, I accept that it's there, and I'm going to accept where I am right now. So even though I still have some restriction in my breathing, I accept that I'm feeling this right now, and that's okay. I'm going to give myself permission to be where I am right now, and I'm going to accept me. So even though there's still some restriction in my breathing, I accept that I'm feeling this for whatever reason. And you may know the reason. And if you know the reason, then just name it. I'm going to love and accept me anyway. So I'm going to start this time at the beginning of the head. This restriction in my breathing, beginning of your eye. This restriction in my breathing, side of your eye. This restriction under your eye. It's in my breathing. Under your nose. This restriction under your lip. It's in my breathing. On your collarbone. This remaining restriction. That's in my breathing. Underneath your arm. This restriction in my breathing. Okay. I'm going to do the same again. Take a breath in. Just notice as that breathing becomes easier, and it should have started to come down now. And when you do this with your clients, just by each round of EFT that you do, that breathing should start to ease, and your client's body should start to come into more balance as they are releasing this cortisol and adrenaline in the system, and its impact on the brain lessens. So just tune into where you are now on that scale of 1 to 10. As your breathing expanded more, has that number come down? And I'm going to do one more round with you just because we can, just because we're here. So we might as well, because the longer that we do this for, the more impact it's going to have on your system. So even though I still have some restriction in my breathing, I accept that it's there. And I'm going to accept where I am right now. So even though I still have some restriction in my breathing, that's okay. I'm going to acknowledge where I am right now and give myself permission to do this tapping and allow my body to relax. So even though there's some restriction in my breathing, I choose to give myself the time to do this tapping sequence for myself so that my body can begin to relax and so that my mind and my emotions can begin to relax in a safe and healthy way. It's restriction in my breathing. I allow my body to relax now. This restriction in my breathing, I wonder if I can allow my body to relax now. Underneath your eye. I wonder if it's safe to allow my body to relax now. Under your nose, this remaining restriction in my breathing. What if it's safe now? Under your lip, for my body to relax. And breathe deeply again. Knowing that right here, right now, I am safe, and I'm open to that deeper breath underneath your arm. Just tap there. So one more. So just breathe in and breathe out. And my breathing has gone so much easier now. Actually, I didn't realize it was restricted before because it didn't feel that way, but it's just opened up so much. So if you just check in with yourself and take a breath now and just notice how you are feeling. Are you feeling more expansive? So this is a restricted breathing technique to use when you're anxious, when you're in overwhelm, when your client's anxious, when your client's in overwhelm. If any of your children are struggling, or if any of your family members are struggling in a stressful situation and getting themselves worked up, it's quick, it's easy, you can do it anywhere. And even if you were in public, I mean, I've done this in the cinema, I do this anywhere, and I am not bothered what people think about me, but that is not the case for everyone. So if you feel a little bit self-conscious in public about tapping all these points, one thing that you can do is to use your finger points. We also have meridians on our fingers. So they are in corners of your nails. So where your thumbnails are, if you had corners, square corners of your nail, it would be in every corner of your nail. So what I do is I do my setup phrase, even though still have this restriction in my breathing. I'm choosing to release this now and let this go. And then you would do your setup phrase 3 times, like we did previously. Then you would tap on your thumbs and do the single words, the reminder phrases there. So this restriction in my breathing. Next thing, I wonder if I can allow my body to relax. This restriction in my breathing. I accept that it's there, and I wonder if I can allow my body to relax now. So you could just do your reminder phrases on your fingers, and you can hide your fist, can't you? You can pull your sleeve over your hand, you can put your hands under a desk. It's not as obvious when you do it that way. So that is something else that you can do. So thank you for listening to me. I will put some notes along with this so that you can look back on what I've said and have a little practice for yourself. The more you practice this, the more it becomes your norm. And the more that you practice this, the more that you reduce the cortisol and the adrenaline in your system. And your thinking starts to change as well because isn't it awful when we're in those panicking situations? If you've ever struggled to breathe, your mind might say, like, how long is this going to last? What if this doesn't stop? How am I going to get out of this? Having these techniques and being able to trust that they work, they give you a sense of confidence, that you are going to get through this situation. There is an end point to it and it isn't going to last forever. And so that is what we need to know sometimes. It helps us to be more in control, doesn't it? It puts us back in that control seat of our own life. So thank you for listening to me. I hope you've enjoyed that and I really hope it comes into some use. If it does benefit you in any way, please send me a message. You can find me on Facebook, Angela Connolly, or you can email me at info@angelaconnolly.co.uk. And I'll see you soon.